Get some! Drop it like a Trump mugshot on Twitter. Power panel. Young Turks, Cenk, Uygur, Rayyvana, Jordan Ewell. Ray's, of course, on Rebel headquarters. Jordan's a TRT contributor and the host of the Insurgents podcast. I want to be an insurgent. That sounds so fun. Although a Muslim insurgent, a little different ring to it. But anyways, so we got a lot of stories for you guys, obviously. We got Mugshot Mania. Republicans now trying to be criminals in mass, so that's fun for everybody. And then all the penguins might die. Lots of stories, big news day. So Ray, take it away.
Yeah, of course we have to start with the biggest story of Trump's mugshot. So let's do that.
We got you. We got you. And more to come. Clown, thug, crook, criminal.
That was the official statement of Congressman Jamal Bowman in response to the moment we've all been waiting for, the reveal of Trump's mugshot, or how I've been describing it, Trump's best impression of Zoolander. And the internet definitely had a field day leading up to and with the release of this image. First, though, how did Trump feel about getting his mugshot taken? He went on Newsmax to air his grievances. Let's watch.
Mr. President, the fourth time you were in custody today. It's totally absurd, in my opinion. But what was it like? How did they treat you? What was the experience like today in jail?
Terrible experience. I came in, I was treated very nicely, but it is what it is. I took a mugshot, which I never heard the words mugshot. Didn't teach me that at the Wharton School of Finance. And I have to go through a process. It's election interference. You know that better than anybody. You cover it so well. You just did a fantastic job. I have to tell you, for the listeners, fantastic job, Greg. But it's a very sad experience, and it's a very sad day for our country.
A mugshot being just one of the many things that Trump didn't learn at the Wharton School of Business. Now, he was talking about how it was a terrible experience for him. We knew that he was going to capitalize on this. So first, he used the mugshot to mark his glorious return to Twitter, or we guess we could call it his debut on X. Let's take a look.
Seconds ago, this is great news. He's back on Twitter. President Trump on Twitter, he just tweeted the mugshot. Election interference, never surrender, DonaldJTrump.com. Mugshot, August 24th, 2023. Welcome back. The last tweet, I believe, was January 6th.
I'm sorry, I just love that you can see him visibly getting turned on by Trump's mugshot. So let's take a closer look at the post that his return to Twitter post. It's a picture of his mugshot and then election interference, never surrender, DonaldJTrump.com. Of course, especially ironic considering he posted it directly after he surrendered. But as Greg Kelly noted, this was his first post on Twitter since his ban following the January 6th riot in 2021. Now, we'll point out also that he's been suspended from Twitter However, it was lifted after Elon Musk purchased the platform, but Trump, ever the petty individual he is, opted to stick to his Truth Social platform until yesterday. Now, in addition to using this mugshot as his comeback to Twitter, we said he was gonna capitalize on it, and capitalize on it he did, because he released this merchandise on his campaign website last night. There it is, although if you're interested in purchasing merchandise, I would suggest you head over to Shop TYT and stay far, far away from Trump's campaign website. Of course, Don Jr., always running right after his father, is getting in on the grifting action. He posted this. Free Trump merch. I'm sorry, I have to pause for a second. The fact that Don Jr. refers to his father as Trump is the funniest thing in the world to me. That's your dad. You just refer to him as Trump. He did it after the debates, he did it. He did it on the news yesterday, and he did it in this tweet. I think it just goes so far to show how little of a relationship there is between the two of them. I'm sorry, but he continued on. To be clear, all profits from this on my web store are going to be donated to the Legal Defense Fund to fight the tyranny and insanity we're seeing before us. Unlike many, I won't try to profit from this, but will do what I can to help. Of course, he had to point out that he's not gonna try to profit like all of the other grifters in the right wing. Ecosphere. We've got some more about the reactions from this, but first, Cenk, initial thoughts on the mugshot.
Yeah, so let's put it back up, because I thought the same thing you did, Ray. First thing I tweeted was blue steel. I think that's what he's going for. But then that made me think, stop the steal. And then secondly, as I look at that tweet, it says never surrender. Oh, that's kind of ironic, right? Because that's literally the picture of you surrendering to authorities. Second of all, there's another surrender in there that's implicit. He's giving up on Truth Social. When he posts on Twitter, that puts him in violation of a number of things for Truth Social. Truth Social, when it first got released and was going to be involved in a SPAC, et cetera, it could have been worth billions of dollars. For a brief moment, that was very, very real. Now they had to play it right from there on to actually deliver on the billions of dollars. But from then on, all they did was one mistake after another, until now, he goes back on Twitter and has basically surrendered Truth Social. It's now worthless. So that's two surrenders in one picture. Well played, Donald Trump, as usual. And then I love the reference to Wharton, right? For a couple of reasons. Number one, he's like, I didn't learn mugshot, I never heard mugshot. Really, you never heard the word mugshot? Okay, all right, at Wharton. Number one, why would you hear it in a business school? That's kind of a weird thing. But if you were gonna hear it at any business school, it would be Wharton. And I know because I went there, we had a wall of fame, and so many people on that wall of fame got arrested that it became a wall of shame, and then they took it down. So yeah, we've heard it was insider trading after insider trading, more like sleazy things like that Donald Trump did. Look, of course, I went there, I'm perfectly proud of it. I'm not proud of those guys, right? I'm not proud of that record, but there's a giant difference between me and Donald Trump. I earned my way in, and his daddy got him in because he's a spoiled little brat, and that's why he still hides his grades. I always find that hilarious. What kind of a deeply pathetic, insecure man hides his grades from college and high school? So I actually challenged Donald Trump to a lot of money. Let's go, my grades are public, you see them, all you gotta do is beat them. And then you'll collect all my money. But of course he doesn't, because he's pathetic. And he was, as one of the professors said, the worst goddamn student I have ever had in my life. That's because he's a spoiled little brat. His daddy got him in by however methods that they used. And that's why all of his grades were a miserable failure. He's a total loser, can't read more than 2 pages. So now, that gets to the deepest irony here. People are like celebrating this at MAGA. I mean, he said, if I shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue, I can get away with it. That would turn out to be the one true thing that he said, right? And now MAGA's acting like, oh yeah, if you shot someone on Fifth Avenue, then that makes it really cool. And I might shoot someone on Fifth Avenue. Well, I'm worried about it. Or I might at least pretend to shoot someone on Fifth Avenue so I can have a mugshot too, because having a marijuana being a criminal is like the greatest thing from the party of law and order. If you say so. Jordan?
I think you touched on something I wanted to explore, and that is people just projecting what they already believed onto the situation. For Democrats, they've been waiting for a Trump mugshot for years. All of his criminality, everything that he has done, they have been waiting for this moment. And I think it was probably not as fulfilling as some might have thought, because now you just wait for a lengthy legal proceeding that might get extended. Who knows what the outcome might be? And like you're saying, for Republicans, it was, this is awesome. He's so based. He's so awesome. Look how great he looks here. And then you saw some really weird, like racial interplay with some of the commentary talking about how this makes him look like he's like leaning into the thug life. People were photoshopping him doing the blood hand symbol. Just really weird when you think about all of the context here. And the only, as Ray and I were talking before we went live, the only person in that camp who was indicted and booked and is black is still in jail. Everyone else, all of the other white people are still are out free. So you have to think about the racial dynamics in this issue too, and the commentary in support of Trump. It all feels very weird.
Right, and just to that point, I couldn't not mention Dinesh D'Souza's tweet where he said that it's a status symbol in urban black communities, and then he said that Trump is like the king of our culture, as if Dinesh D'Souza is a member of urban black communities, and then he had the gall to compare Trump to Tupac. Let's just get a little bit more into just how silly this is, because right wingers are trying to turn this into a trend.
In terms of how iconic that photo is, we now have his supporters in Georgia photoshopping themselves into mugshots, Fulton County mugshots, putting those on Twitter and calling them MAGA mugshots and saying that now it's on. So he has galvanized even further. That's going to be a huge problem if he makes it to a general campaign. But so far right now, his base is sticking with him more than they ever have.
And just because all of Trump's supporters are probably a little bit older and struggle with technology, this Twitter account put out a little tutorial on making these images from, and I don't get the bit, maybe it has to do with the wall brick suit, explained what should have been an exceptionally simple process on how to make it look like you have your own mugshot from Fulton County, because apparently that's cool now. And wouldn't you know it, here's the goon who's pushing this the most.
It's a horrible day in America, and to stand in solidarity with President Trump, I made my own mugshot with the Fulton County Jail here logo, and I changed it to my official photo on Twitter. So I encourage everyone to make your own MAGA mugshot. Stand with President Trump. We always stand with our president because he's the one that's going to save this country, and we thank God for him. So that's what I did to stand in solidarity. I'm standing right here at the jail with all of y'all. I thank Right Side. I thank everybody that's here, and we're going to support them all the way.
We do have a picture of her fake mugshot. Not the best Photoshop job I've ever seen in my life, but she tweeted out along with the caption, "I stand with President Trump against the commie DA Fani Willis," because as we know, communists love to be prosecutors. But anyway, the commie DA Fani Willis, who is nothing more than a political hitman tasked with taking out Biden's top political opponent. Persecution, not prosecution, despite the fact that, I mean, literally in every single form of the word is prosecution. But one of the funniest examples of these fake mugshots posted, in my opinion, was one shared by Amy Kramer, who's the chair of the Women for America First group. I mean, it's gotta be the worst Photoshop job. I think it's hilarious that she obviously got all dolled up to take this mugshot picture, even going so far as not to smile. And the Photoshop job is so bad, and even still, she fooled members of Trump's base. Let's take a look at some of these comments. Despite the fact that she explicitly said it was fake, they still thought it was real. She said, "This is Photoshopped. I have not been indicted. for the time being anyway. But they are coming for all of us in the end. You need to stand up and speak up now while you still have a chance. To which this person replied, God bless. I had no idea you were one of the defendants. She said, I'm not, for the time being. But I stand with them. They are coming for all of us eventually. Although personally, I've never been afraid that they were gonna come for me because I've never tried to overturn the results of a Democratic election. So that's not something that plagues my mind on the regular. But I don't know, Cenk, what's your takeaway from this? Was making Trump do a mugshot galvanizing for his base, or I don't know, was it galvanizing for the Democratic Party, who's been waiting for so long for a moment like this?
Yeah, I don't look with the Trump base. Everything's galvanizing. He eats a Twinkie. They're like, yes, Twinkies. Right? He doesn't eat a Twinkie. They're like, oh, what a great perseverance, not eating that, discipline, not eating that Twinkie. It doesn't matter. So forget his base. His base is already locked in 200%. You're not going to move them. They're the most politically irrelevant people on the planet. And so I say that because since they're not going to move, what are you going to do? Appeal to them and get them? No, it doesn't. So just move on, get independence, right? And you should, like a Democrat or a prosecutor or any rational person, should never ever consider the core of the MAGA base. That's at least 37% of the Republican Party, arguably 64% of the Republican Party based on the polling, right? But whatever that number is, they're never going to move a single inch, and there isn't anything Donald Trump could do that wouldn't make them love him more, not less. He can get arrested 28 times. He can come over and have sex with their wife, and they'll still be like, yes, oh my God. You know what? Since Trump did it, I might actually have sex with my wife. Okay, I'm gonna do whatever he does. He got arrested, I wanna get arrested, right? He got punched in the face, I wanna get punched in the face. I got it, they're goners. They're cult 2000%, right? So, but the interesting part is the Democratic part and the left wing and the independent, et cetera. For me, I know a lot of people got joy out of it. Obviously, Congressman Bowen did this, that's for sure. Me, I actually wasn't looking forward to it, and I, other than the amusing blue steel look, I got no joy out of it at all, actually. I don't care. I don't want the president having a mugshot. I don't need Trump humiliating himself because he humiliates himself every day, 2,000 times a day. Like every word out of his mouth is an utter humiliation for himself. So I don't need a mugshot to prove that. So, like, of course, parts of the story are hilarious. I agree with you that my favorite tweet was that lady who had to be like, no, I wasn't arrested. I mean, I want to be arrested because I'm a Republican and Trump did it. I mean, and being arrested is awesome and I look forward to it. But what if they arrest us? That would be terrible, but we want it, but what? Huh, what? But I wasn't arrested, but here's a mugshot and I'm so proud. Okay, look, there's no talking to them. It's like talking to someone who believes in fundamentalist version of religion. They just go in circles and circles and circles. And then, but there's two more funny parts. One is the legal defense fund that you mentioned, Ray. I mean, he's like, I am not profiting off of this. We're just gonna use this money to pay dad's legal bills or Trump's legal bills. That means you're profiting off of it. What do you mean? Like, it's not like you're giving it to a charity for kittens. You're using it to help your dad get off. So otherwise he'd have to use his own money. So it doesn't make any sense. And you're right, it's weird how he constantly calls him Trump. Because when you said it, Ray, I thought, imagine if that was my dad and I'm like, I like the Uygur merch. and finally, I finally got one of the mysteries from yesterday explained. Because they released the mugshot, and then they also said 6'3", 215 pounds, because there was supposed to be a weigh-in and they were supposed to measure him. And I'm like, 215, my ass. I mean, literally his ass, as I said yesterday. That's about how much his ass weighs. How about the rest of them? And like Rudy weighed in at 230. There's Trump's less than Rudy, come on. Trump weighed 245 according to him when he was at the White House. He lost 30 pounds since he left. Anyway, the mystery's explained. That one was self-reported. 215. Guys, come on, MAGA. Look, by the way, my Twitter mentions are nothing but MAGA guys. You know, for whatever it's worth, good and the bad, etc. And even those guys have stopped defending his lies. Like they know he doesn't weigh 250 pounds. They know that he had a fake university and a fake charity and a fake everything. It's total utter fraud. They just like him because they're like, yeah, but he's my fraud. And I hate the Democrats so much that I'll become a criminal just to hate Democrats. So like everybody knows he's a preposterous, ridiculous, flamboyant liar. And for the MAGA guys out there go, oh, he lied about everything, but not these criminal actions. No way. No, all those forged documents with the fake electors, that was the one thing that was real, and that's why this is a persecution. Get. Jordan.
This trend of people making their own mugshots really feels like the inevitable result here, because it illustrates this persecution complex that Republicans love. No matter what it is, they especially love it with religion. But anything that happens that has an adverse impact on them, their party, their politics, it's just, oh, the world's out to get us. We're the victims here. And for Trump, he's leaning into that. He's a martyr. I'm never going to surrender. He's fundraising off of it. He's selling merch. Of course, that's just how politics, I guess, it works on the right now. And I think we have to consider what that looks like, right? To go back to earlier, there was a poll that showed 28% of Republicans think Trump actually did something wrong. A vast majority of Republicans, not surprising, they think he didn't commit a crime. 92% of Democrats think he committed a crime. But when you look at how many people think he'll actually face any repercussions, it's only around half of Democrats and obviously a little bit less, a little bit fewer of Republicans. And I think that illustrates how this two-tier justice system plays out in scenarios like this. And ultimately, it's just about how do you posture to your base? How can you merchandise something? How can you lean into being a martyr? And how can people who support you also feel like they, by extension, are being persecuted? That's why you see the immediate response being fundraising appeals, merchandise, and people pretending like they are also arrested or indicted or booked. They want to be victims so bad because for them, that's how they receive any interaction with politics, but their contributions is just how do we own, humiliate, and embarrass our opponents. That's what Republicans think politics is. How do we humiliate? How do we attack marginalized people, immigrants, the LGBTQIA plus community, trans people, ethnic minorities? That is how they see politics. So it's no surprise that that's how this played out here.
Yeah, I'm gonna add one quick thing to that. Jordan's 100% right. God, the right wing loves being victims. And let's be honest, some portions of the left also like being victims. But almost everybody in that category, whether right or left, has never actually been a victim. Because if you've been a victim, you don't want to be a victim. Okay, so they're all posers, they're all playing victim. But there's a deeper irony on the right wing side. Because they say Trump is so strong because he's the Democrats' victim. He's such a victim of the strong Democrats. He's a poor little Trumpy. He can't defend himself. You see, that's why he's so strong. Really? That doesn't make any sense to me at all. But all right, if you want to kiss up to a guy that you think is like the world's biggest victim who cannot stop crying, that's up to you, brothers and sisters.
We do have a poll because the audience got to hear our thoughts. So maybe we should get to hear theirs too. If they go to tyt.com/poll/mugshot, they can answer the question about whether or not the mugshot will help or hurt Donald Trump, so they can weigh in as well. I'll just say that just to the point that Jordan was making, the rhetoric we saw from the woman who kept saying, they're coming for all of us. They keep saying, if it can happen to him, it can happen to us. As if regular ass people haven't been getting indicted for crimes for all of American history, as opposed to the fact that this is the first president former president for that to ever happen to. I mean, it's just, they have to twist themselves so completely around and into circles to frame Trump as a victim. It's sad and cultish to watch happen.
Yep. All right, we got to take a quick break. When we come back, more crying from Republicans, more fun. We'll be right back. TYT, Cenk, Jordan, and Rayyvana with you guys. Of course, check out Rayyvana on Rebel Headquarters. And Jay Jesper 82 gifted 5 Young Turks memberships on YouTube, and Bruce Alzar gifted 10. As always, they are American heroes. They've been amazing in how much they've gifted, and we appreciate you. And Lizzie's mom wrote in, thanks for the gift. You see that? That's the community sticking together. I love it. All right, Ray, what's next?
Yeah, well, we're gonna have to take a look at some of the crazier legal theories floating around about how Trump can defend himself in his upcoming cases. So let's start with this one.
You know, the president has a duty to enforce the laws. If he is seeking to unravel and uncover fraudulent votes, he has immunity to do so. I think that'll be a motion to dismiss. And I think it's actually a serious motion to be made.
You just saw Greg Jarrett, who's a longtime Fox News legal analyst and commentator, claiming that Trump had complete immunity to try and overthrow our country's democracy. He was simply executing his duties as president. Now, Jarrett was referring to the racketeering charges that Fani Willis has brought against Trump. Just in case you couldn't tell which one of the numerous indictments against him he was referring to. Now, of course, his argument is absolutely absurd. So let's break down why it's wrong as quickly as possible so we don't waste too much time on this moron. So number one, Trump wasn't seeking to unravel or uncover fraudulent votes. He was trying to intimidate elected officials into changing votes into his favor. And second, by the time of Trump's now infamous call to Brad Raffensperger, the Georgia Secretary of State's office had already conducted 3 vote counts, all of which found that Trump lost. But if you thought that was the only spineless defense of Trump we'd have for you, you would be wrong. Here's more from Fox News contributor Jonathan Turley.
But in Donald Trump's case, he insists that he does believe that Georgia could have been flipped with a recount. And the way that she portrayed that phone call to Raffensperger, I think is really evidence of the bias and unfairness of aspects of this indictment. You know, it makes perfect sense when you're challenging an election to say, you know, I only need around 11,000 votes. So if you do a statewide review, that's not a lot in a state like Georgia. That's not criminal. That's making a case for a recount.
I mean, we've already made it clear why Trump was not simply asking for a recount, because he quite literally was not asking for a recount. But Cenk, if this is the best argument that cable news has, things don't look good for Donald Trump.
Look, Greg Jarrett is a troubled man. We've covered his troubles before. I'm not surprised that he has idiotic legal theories, which I'll break down in a second. But Jonathan Turley, oh man, his fall has been really heartbreaking. So Turley is this sophisticated, intelligent guy. Back in the day when Keith Olbermann was around, he'd have him on MSNBC all the time, and he'd break down the crimes of George Bush and Dick Cheney. I'm not saying that Turley's gone in the wrong direction just because he seems to be a huge Trump fan and is on Fox News 24/7 defending Donald Trump. Look, sometimes he makes legal arguments where I go, okay, it's not crazy, it's a stretch, but I get it. He's a lawyer and he likes Trump and he's doing an argument that's a stretch. In this case, he had a tweet that was the exact opposite of what he just said on air just a little while ago. So something happened to Turley. I don't know if his mind broke. Sometimes this happens, like people get so mad at the establishment and the lies of the establishment that they decide they're gonna go crazy in the opposite direction and be like, yeah, Trump's awesome. The guy who's a perpetual liar and a lifelong criminal is the good guy. No, you could hate the establishment and notice their lies and realize that Trump's lying too. That argument was preposterous. So if they had done no recounts, and I've said this now many times, and Trump called and said, hey, can you guys do a recount? Are you kidding me? That's not a crime at all. That's not within a million miles of a crime. But when they have already done 2, 3 recounts, they've done a hand recount, and you go, I don't give a damn about your recounts, and I don't care who won. Find me 11,780 votes, one more than I need. And how do you explain the fake electors? They had them sign forged documents pretending to be the real electors. Yeah, that's a crime. It's an obvious crime. And Jonathan Turley knows that. So him humiliating himself, debasing himself on Fox News is one of the saddest things I've ever seen. So now back to the moron Greg Jarrett. I think when a president is trying to, I would say steal an election, but in his case, stop a steal, then he has immunity. Really? Immunity from what? From what, all crimes? Is that a thing? So can the president say, well, I thought I won, but the recounts show that Joe Biden won, and so did the original counts. But you know what? In my mind, I'm trying to stop the stealing of an election. You know what? So I'm gonna go shoot Joe Biden in the head. Could Trump do that if he has immunity? Oh, you didn't think it through, did you, Greg? And there's many reasons why Greg might not have thought it through. But no, there is no such law as blanket immunity for a president when he's trying to, defend his vote count in an election. He pulled that straight out of his ass. But the problem with the viewers of conservative channels is that they believe every word that every dumbass on those channels says. So now I guarantee you'll see tons of people on the right going, the president has total immunity. Yeah. When he thinks he's right, he can do anything he wants. He can break any law. Oh yeah, the national secrets, by the way, already declassified them with his laser eyes, and he thought about it, and now he has immunity for all crimes. What can you do when people are not attached to the reality-based world? I mean, there's no arguing with these idiots. Jordan.
I mean, just to add some context, in the span of time between when the first recount started and when Trump asked for this, Dave Weigel with Semaphore articulated exactly when these things happened. November 11th, Raffensperger started the audit. It finished on the 19th. The election was certified for Biden on November 20th. 21st, Trump requested a recount. Biden won that recount on December 7th. The electors voted on December 14th. And then on January 2nd, Trump made that call asking them to find votes. I mean, this was settled. This was a done deal multiple times. And for all of this talk, all of this hyperbolic language you see from the right about Obama and Biden being authoritarians, every little thing they do, big or small, is some authoritative act, and they're violating the Constitution, and everything they do brings us closer to an authoritarian state. Where, look, right here, you're calling for a president, and now in this case, a former president, to be able to do whatever they want, no matter what, no legal barriers, no boundaries. For all of this concern, this purported concern about authoritarianism and in the executive branch, that goes out the window when it's their guy. And this is extremely dangerous when you have a party who thinks like that, and you have messaging from the most watched cable network that appeals to that party parroting that language. This is extremely dangerous because millions of people tune in every night and they internalize it. And their view of politics and their view of our society becomes, if it's my guy doing it, I don't care.
Just real quick, I want to clarify one other part of that call that's so important. He threatened to imprison Raffensperger. He said, look, what you're doing could be criminal. So what, Greg Jarrett, is that also, does he have immunity on that? What if he had actually put him in prison? Oh, I didn't like your recount. I didn't like that you were accurate about it. I told you to find me votes I don't have, and you didn't find them, so now you're in prison. Oh, by the way, I executed you. Does he have immunity for that too? Look, Al Gore had an election absolutely positively stolen from him by the Supreme Court. But that was a court's decision, and the Democrats said, we're gonna abide by it. Because what else are you gonna do? You're gonna start a civil war? You're gonna commit also criminal acts? The Supreme Court ruled it sucks, and they were total and utter liars. And they literally stopped the recount, not the count, but the recount of Florida. And it turns out afterwards they did a recount in Florida, and Al Gore had won. Al Gore had actually won. But if Al Gore came to me and said, hey, should we do a recount? I'd be like, hell yeah. Should we fight like hell for a recount? Hell yeah. Should we do a hand recount? Hell yeah. But if he said, should we do fake electors and have them sign fake papers and then pretend I won? I would say, no, don't do that. That's obviously illegal. If he said, should we threaten to imprison people, state officials in Florida if they don't do what I tell them? Because at the time, remember, Al Gore is the vice president of the United States of America. He could have done similar things to as Trump did. I'm like, are you kidding me? You're gonna threaten to imprison people? No, don't do that. That's definitely illegal. But there is no such thing on the right wing. Nothing. Whoever has had any ounce of credibility, principles, was an actual conservative and understood what it meant to be a conservative and cared about the US Constitution and law and order, any of those things, they've already left. There was 3% of the Republican Party and they left. The rest of them are Constitution, as long as Trump wants to burn it. Remember, Trump literally said that he wants to suspend the Constitution. Would he have immunity for that too, Greg Jarrett? And you know he would. In Greg Jarrett's mind, in Jonathan Turley's mind, burn the Constitution, say it no longer exists, we're not gonna have elections anymore. And they'd be like, yes, because Trump did it, it must be right. That's when you know you've lost your goddamn mind.
Conveniently, Fox News never covers that part of the phone call when they do their little shtick about, oh, Trump just said we need this many votes. He wasn't asking anybody to actually do anything. And speaking of the messaging around this, we talked about the way that cable news is portraying it. Let's talk about the way that Trump is defending himself against these indictments. Let's start with this video.
I mean, I have counts where you're going to love this, and Chris Ruddy will be thrilled. But one of the things is I told people Newsmax. Did you know that? That was one of my counts. I told people to watch Newsmax.
We love it, sir. We love it,
Mr. People to watch Newsmax.
Thank you for that.
I hope you don't get charged. You'll probably get charged because I mentioned your name. So, but I think you'll be okay.
I feel like it goes without saying, but I'm gonna say it anyway. No, absolutely. That is 100% untrue. None of Trump's counts are for watching Newsmax. Although, maybe there's an argument to be made that Newsmax should not be allowed to be watched in this country. But no, anyway, Newsmax is mentioned, and the reason that he's presenting this argument is because it's mentioned in the context of Trump's first count violation of the Georgia RICO Act. The countless 161 acts of racketeering activity, Newsmax comes up in exactly one of those. So let's take a look from the indictment. It says, on or about the 30th day of December 2020, Donald John Trump caused to be tweeted from the Twitter account @RealDonaldTrump. Hearings from Atlanta on the Georgia election overturned now being broadcast. Check it out at One America News Network, at Newsmax, and many more. At Brian Kemp, Georgia should resign from office. He is an obstructionist who refuses to admit that we won Georgia. Big. Also won the other swing states. This was an overt act in furtherance of the conspiracy. So clearly not being indicted for telling people to watch Newsmax, and it has everything to do with the context in which he suggested that. Now, I mean, one of the things I want to know, about this election, the furtherance of the election conspiracy. I think that especially when it comes to the voting machines, so many of the other news sites and news outlets distance themselves from that. But every time I see, a clip from Newsmax or a clip from what is the other one, Right Side Broadcasting Network, that's all they seem to be talking about. I mean, is there not any accountability for these networks that continue to spread these lies, Cenk? I don't know. That's just my takeaway from this.
Well, Fox News is now a little bit more mixed, as we've covered. And the other day they were praising Nikki Haley, who had taken on Donald Trump in that Republican debate. Obviously, she took him on in absentia. He wasn't there, but she made some pretty harsh comments about him. And why is that? Partly because Rupert Murdoch now hates him. And he owns Fox News, but also part of the reason Rupert Murdoch hates him because he cost him $800 million. In order to appease Donald Trump, they told a whole bunch of lies about the election, and Dominion made them pay for it in that giant settlement. Newsmax and OAN have not, I don't know what OAN's situation is, but Newsmax has not settled with Dominion yet, and they have not gone to court yet. So look, if the settlement or the jury comes in with a verdict even a quarter of what Fox News paid, Newsmax is out of business. There's no way in the world they can afford that. So whether it's those lies or the new lies, at some point, someone's gonna try to hold them accountable in court, and we're gonna see if these guys exist after that. And so, but Greg Kelly cracks me up, man. So he's like, over the moon with Donald Trump. He's like a little boy, right? And in other segments, he acts like a tough guy. But when Trump's on, he's like, Donald, yes, Donald. And when he was on, we showed the clip earlier in the show when Donald Trump came back on Twitter, the guy nearly lost it in his pants. He's just back on Twitter, so what? He acted like he had won the presidency or something. So yeah, there's several networks now whose only job is to fluff Donald Trump. And yeah, that works for the moment being. It gets them enough money to exist because there's a lot of folks on the right wing who's in the fluffing business. But I think the time's gonna run out on it through the lawsuits, but we'll see.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. They're all vying for the disillusioned Fox viewer, because for people who are fully in the Trump camp, any detraction from that or any other commentary that could question some of Trump's claims or distance themselves from Trump, those viewers are going to be upset because it just completely changes the paradigm for them. They don't want to acknowledge that. They don't want to think about any criticism. They don't want to hear it, so they'll go somewhere else. And those networks are rabid. I mean, One American News, I think that's the network that was pulled from Dish Network because they were going for executions of people who stood in the way of the certification of Biden's election in 2020. I mean, that is fully deranged, and I think that's a smart move by DirecTV for just cutting them loose because it was just a total liability. But as those networks vie for those viewers, part of that is just, like you're saying, Cenk, fluffing Trump, being totally subservient to him, defending everything he says and does. And that's fan service for the crowds, that's fan service for the audience. And when you mix in some of these deranged conspiracy theories, that's where you're going to get the more, the bigger lunacy fringe that in real life acts out, acts of violence, stochastic terrorism, bomb threats when they see stories about trans care at children's hospitals or teachers in random public schools who just acknowledge that people with other sexualities or identities exist. I mean, those networks, in part by courting Trump and fluffing him, there are real world consequences to that. That Fox has even taken a tiny bit of moderation into account over the past couple of years has led to really disastrous consequences.
Yeah, one last quick thing on it. Look, guys, we also shouldn't fall into the same trap. And so at TYT, we're super clear. We criticize everyone when they deserve it. Doesn't matter, Republican, Democrat. You see us do it every day, 12 times a day, right? But at MSNBC, have you ever seen them criticize Democratic leaders? So we should be better than that. And so everybody gets into their camps and think that they don't do anything wrong. And I've seen mainstream media criticize Republicans for taking corporate money. I've almost never seen them criticize Democrats for taking the same exact corporate money. So while we're rightfully pointing out the cult over there, no one should form a cult anywhere else, including on the left or the Democratic Party or anywhere else. All right, we got to take a quick break. When we come back, shockingly, this is the second time in 3 days that I agree completely with Ben Shapiro. What in the world is going on? We'll be back. Back on TYT, Cenk, Jordan, Rayyvana, Jesus Contreras Rodriguez, and Dallin. They just joined by hitting the join button below the video on YouTube, thereby becoming American heroes. Guys, you help us to do honest, real reporting here. You see us, we don't pick sides, we just stick with the facts. We give you our perspective and we're honest about our perspective. But we don't cheat on behalf of anyone, and we're not like the MAGA cult. This is only our side, and our side can do no wrong. No, we do honest reporting here, and I love that you guys support it. And I think that Bruce Alsar just gifted more memberships. The guy's amazing. All right, Rayyvana, what's next?
Yeah, so let's start with Ben Shapiro and him saying something that I actually agree with.
Tucker has principles, obviously. He speaks about them regularly. This would have been a great opportunity for him to ask the former president and leading Republican candidate about some of those principles. He didn't do any of it. Instead, he how soft were the softballs that Tucker was throwing to Donald Trump? He asked Donald Trump to rip on Mike Pence by suggesting that Donald Trump had always been very nice to Mike Pence. This question is so bizarre. I don't even know what to say about this.
Tucker Carlson's interview with Donald Trump was so bad, even conservatives like Ben Shapiro are criticizing it. But here's a little bit more of Ben Shapiro apparently in disbelief that a grifting conservative did exactly what grifting conservatives do.
It's Tucker's question that's absurd. You've always been nice to Mike Pence? The actual what? What? Oh? Okay, for those who have a memory of a goldfish, let me remind you of a time when Donald Trump suggested, nay, said outright that Mike Pence had the unilateral capacity to overthrow an American election, essentially called him a coward, suggested that he would be forced to do so. And then when Mike Pence called him from the Capitol building on January 6th, because the Capitol building was under assault, he basically did nothing. You were always very nice to Mike Pence is one of the craziest Orwellian statements I have ever heard. You were always very nice to Mike Pence is an insane statement.
And Ben Shapiro even went so far as to suggest the questions that should have been asked. So one was, the question to Trump should be, okay, how are you going to unsteal it? Right? That's like a question that whether you love Trump, whether you hate Trump, like that's a really good question that Trump has never answered. You say the election was stolen in 2020, but you won, but it was stolen, but you won. So let's say the same thing happens this time. What is your plan to unsteal the election? Is that the question Tucker asked? No, he asked him questions like, why are people so mean to you? Although personally, I think the question that should be asked is, can you provide us with evidence that the election was stolen from you? But Ben Shapiro rounded up his segment by describing the interview between Tucker and Trump with the same word that I've incidentally been using to describe the Ben Shapiro show for years: propaganda.
No, that's not counter programming. I'm sorry, that really is not. I mean, it's just a propaganda 45-minute softball for Trump. That's all that is. I mean, just realistically speaking, you may love it, maybe that's your bag, but that's what it is. And that, how are you simultaneously so brave and yet so humble? And that's what that interview was.
I mean, he's being hyperbolic, but Cenk, that is exactly what the interview was like.
I don't even think it's hyperbolic. Like I think it's pretty much exactly what happened. So that's 2 times in the last week I've agreed with Ben Shapiro. So check whatever multiverse you're in. He said the Fox News rules on what you could do in showing the clips was crazy, and he's totally right. They had all these crazy restrictive rules about the debate that made no sense. And now he's calling out Tucker Carlson for that ridiculous softball interview. Left-wing pivot? I don't think it's a left-wing pivot, and I don't want to make fun of someone for being rational and right. I'll take it. I'm happy to take it. I'm curious if it'll last, though, because remember, Shapiro was a little bit of a never-Trumper in the beginning. Then once Trump won and his audience roared and said, no, we want you to be his, server, then Shapiro served him for years and years and years. And look, I'll give Ben this. He's way too smart to not realize what a pathological liar and criminal Donald Trump is. And I bet he's super frustrated at the 28 different laws that Trump broke for no goddamn reason. And then he had to sit there and defend him on all of those when he knows full well that he's a criminal and a pathological liar and a narcissist. But a little bit of a shift now and saying that that Tucker should ask tough questions of Trump. That is correct, and I'll take it and see how long it lasts. I don't know if it'll be a day, a week, but I would be shocked if Donald Trump won the primary and Ben Shapiro continued to criticize him. Let's see what happens.
What I liked about that was how Ben Shapiro started it. Oh, Tucker, we know, has principles. He talks about them all the time, which, oh yeah, that's the way you demonstrate that you have principles, just by talking about them, not living them. I mean, just look at this. Tucker's a guy who has pretended now for years to be an opponent of the elites. He's going to fight the elites from the right. And what did he do since he launched that branding campaign? He acquiesced to every request that Trump had, gave him airtime repeatedly, helped, together they got Tucker's son an internship in Trump's White House. They are buddy-buddy together, and then you see here a 45-minute softball interview. This isn't a guy with principles. This is a guy who knows his role in conservative media. Even though he's not at Fox anymore, he's still going to play the same role until somebody else starts funding him. Maybe he already has a funder, who knows? But this is like from the very premise. Ben Shapiro could have just ended that commentary. Oh, this guy does not have principles. He's just doing PR. But one really funny thing about that interview, I don't know if you saw the clip, was when Tucker asked Trump, do you think Epstein killed himself? And Trump's response, not yes, no, not, oh, that guy's terrible. His very first response to that question was, well, I know he was really popular in Palm Beach. Yeah, man, that's what everyone thinks about Jeffrey Epstein. It's just how popular he was in Palm Beach. I really enjoyed that clip, and I hope if you haven't seen it yet, you have time to go see it.
Yeah, it's on our YouTube channel. Don't worry. and the reason he said that is because he loved Jeffrey Epstein, and I read the quote when we covered the interview where Trump said, "Oh, he's a terrific guy," and it said that he likes women as much as I do, except he likes them much younger. Oops. So that's why when Tucker asked him that, he's like, I mean, I don't know what happened to Jeffrey. I mean, and remember, it happened under Trump's watch, and Trump was great friends with Epstein. I mean, Tucker loves conspiracy theories. Do you like that one? Okay, but last two things here. The question I would ask Trump, there's 1,000 questions I'd ask him, but one of them along the lines of what Shapiro was mentioning is, then why did you, if you have all this evidence and you have your 2,000 mules and a Kraken, why did you lose 60 cases in a row? Why did 60 judges, a lot of them appointed by you, all rule against you and all say that you have zero evidence? I don't know that he's ever directly been asked that. And then finally, look, if Shapiro's making a pivot, not to the left wing, but to honesty and to honestly criticize his own side as well as the other side, while still being an ardent right winger, I would greatly welcome that. And because, I mean, it hasn't happened in decades where a right wing host is actually super conservative, but still honest. There's a couple of guys around the edges, John Ziegler, Joe Walsh, but among the major right wing media hosts, it is a shocking development when they're honest, even one time. So I don't want to discourage it, I want to encourage it. Keep going, Ben.
A staggering 9,000 emperor penguin chicks perished last November, and scientists believe it's because of, you probably guessed it, unprecedented sea ice melting in Antarctica. Now that's according to a new study published in the journal Nature. Here's the title of that article. Record low 2022 Antarctic sea ice led to catastrophic breeding failure of emperor penguins. Antarctic sea ice is in the midst of a staggering disastrous decline, and Common Dreams wrote about that. They said that 4 of the years with the lowest sea ice extent in the 45-year satellite record have been in the last 7 years, with the lowest in 2021 to 2022 and 2022 to 2023, according to the British Antarctic Survey. In February of this year, ice extent shrank to a record low, and it has not fully recovered during the Antarctic winter months. And we have a graph that displays exactly what we're talking about. So you can see in the graph that the orange line illustrates that the extent of Antarctic sea ice this year is well below the average. It was the lowest amount of ice ever seen in June. And between October and January of 22 to 23, sea ice around the continent has been at or below the lowest ever recorded in the 45-year satellite record. And what does this mean for the penguins? It's really bad news. Between April and January, they spend their time on sea ice connected to the land. There they lay and hatch their eggs in the Antarctic winter and rear them through the spring until the chicks develop waterproof plumage in December or January and are ready to strike off on their own. And I'll just say, moving forward in the story, it gets really sad for the penguins because the co-author Norm Ratcliffe explained this. But if it breaks earlier than that, the chicks basically lose that platform. So they either fall into the sea or they drown. Ratcliffe added that while the chicks might be able to make it to an iceberg, their feathers would still be wet. So they'll probably freeze to death. And that's exactly what the scientists in the study think happened to 4 out of 5 emperor penguin colonies in the Bellingshausen Sea region. Researchers had been tracking the colonies using satellite imagery for years based on the buildup of guano, aka penguin poop, on the ice. Then in November, that ice suddenly disintegrated, with some areas seeing a loss of 100%. I'm gonna say that again, 100%. But the ice went the guano, leading the scientists to conclude the colonies were abandoned. They think it's unlikely that the chicks survived the loss. And you can see the loss of sea ice in these satellite images. So this is the first recorded case of such extensive breeding failure in emperor penguins due to sea ice loss. But the study authors warn it may be a snapshot of a future warming Antarctica. And lastly, the lead author Peter Fretwell told the BBC this: there is hope. We can cut our carbon emissions that are causing the warming, but if we don't, we will drive these iconic, beautiful birds to the verge of extinction. And Cenk, reading that still sort of broke my heart because, as someone who cares about climate change and, lowering carbon emissions, I think that the hope is small, even when I try to be optimistic that, our country's government and governments around the globe are actually going to take up the cause of the human species, let alone the emperor penguins, when it comes to reducing carbon emissions.
Yeah, look, I'm a big fan of man. What the right wing would call a secular humanist. They say it derisively, I say it with great pride. But having said that, we are a bit of a virus. And so we could turn it around, and I believe in us, but we are killing off a giant number of life on this planet. It's definitely our fault. So look, I don't know if you guys even know this, but the saber-toothed tiger, I thought, and this has made my ignorance, I thought they died off with the dinosaurs and the woolly mammoth too. Turns out, no, saber-toothed tiger only became extinct 8 to 10,000 years ago, and woolly mammoth only 4,000 years ago. Guess who killed them? We did. We killed them all. There was giant species in Australia until man landed in Australia. We killed them all. And so here, I'm gonna go to graphic 9 to give you a sense of the damage we're doing now. A growing number of scientists note that the Earth is in the midst of a 6th mass extinction driven by human activities, namely the conversion of natural areas to agriculture and urban uses, hunting and overfishing, pollution, and climate change. Researchers estimate that the current rate of species loss varies between 100 and 10,000 times the background extinction rate. We are killing off these species at record pace. You know how much ice is melted in that region? Enough ice to cover the size of Greenland. Have you ever seen Greenland on a map? So those penguins are all drowning, they're the chicks, but part of the reason we're doing this story is that so you can see it with your own eyes. When we kill off these thousands of different species, you never see it. But look at the cute penguins and understand that it's our fault that they're all falling into the water and dying because we're changing the climate like nothing the world has ever seen before. And soon, of course, just when we think, who cares? Let's kill off all the different animals. Let's kill off the penguins now. Well, at the end of the day, it's gonna come back and it's gonna get us. The Earth is gonna be fine. The Earth is gonna shake us off and then go back to creating life. But we don't have any idea the kind of damage that we're doing today. Jordan.
Yeah, and unfortunately, a lot of people on the right or climate skeptics in general will see this and only look at it in a silo. They will refuse to acknowledge this as part of a larger trend. And like you're saying, Cenk, by the time it gets to us, it's going to be too late. The first people and groups and places on this planet that are really going to be affected by climate change and are being affected by climate change aren't really the major population centers, aren't where power is concentrated and the elite don't live there. But the thing is, you can look to the elite's behavior to know that it is real, because they're all building and creating bunkers in remote locations that would be safe from a climate apocalypse, because they want to survive. They don't care if you survive, but they're going to make as much money and they're going to contribute to climate change as much as they can. That enables them to make more and more money because they have a backup plan and they know you're screwed. And it was surprising to see in the debate earlier this week, the question from the young Republican was about climate change and asking about it, saying that, acknowledging in the question that it is the number 1 issue impacting young voters. Unfortunately, nobody on that stage took it seriously, and you had the overzealous, try-hard Vivek Ramaswamy explicitly call it a hoax. But you have to acknowledge that it's even being mentioned as an issue that young voters are concerned about does show that this problem is unignorable completely. They have to at least talk about it rather than just talking about the importance of offshore drilling.
All right, we are massively out of time. Check out the Insurgent podcast that Jordan's on. Check out Rebel Headquarters for Rayyvana. When we come back, we got a couple of interesting issues. Carlos Santana randomly attacks transgender people. What in the world? Why did he do that? And then Russia's got some fun new explanations for what happened to the head of the Wagner group. But it definitely wasn't the Russians. Look, I have one point that'll totally end any controversy, like there is no controversy around it, but any nonsense Putin excuses when we return. Thanks for listening to the full episode of The Young Turks. Support our work, listen ad-free, access members-only bonus content, and more by subscribing to Apple Podcasts at apple.co/TYT. I'm your host, Cenk Uygur, and I'll see you soon.